조심해도 자리라 신인데 잼보디 선제시 오바이 돌괴나 다신나 잼바쇼 남바제나 예제괴과 딘지딘지 제다잠비 두예제 마나 사예 제자 아니야다야미 어야 저두에
Mambutu.
근데
Mambutu.
뭐래
A lot of questions. To use the power of restraint, doesn't the affliction have to be in the mind in order to restrain oneself from killing, stealing, lying, etc.? If one restrains oneself from non-virtuous action in the face of anger or desire in the mind, isn't this virtue? Di kasa nyumondang domsengi kejayo. Nyumondang domsemgi keja.
뭐다 갈세 니몬단 돔스야
Domsem nyumong yorwa
돔심
돔심.
뽕 있어 봐
lare
시래 니몬
nyumongdang nyumong
돔비스 돔바스나 고바
kokpa
돔바세데
dompas
또 서비 돔바세나
domsem di kasa sim di nyumong le dom sigre
시래 저된 거 고난까지 안 좋지다 니몬 돔심스 그래
mare nyumong kesona deni di domsem
예. 니몬 제소나 베나 대자당 제당조지 제와지지나 아니 대자기 님이 대당 아니 세당기 님이 대 천이 아니 세당 제와지 가소리 님이 통디가나 아니 단다 세당 제와텔라 교바제당 마음반에 세당 자와네 미제와지 그치 고토바 치고 냠바게 아니 마음반 담바 미시 냠바데 담비다리다.
So here, yes, that's right. This mind, which the sort of restraining mind, I guess is a way you could say it, it comes out of, first of all, recognition that the mental affliction is arising in your mind. You have to first see that you're becoming angry or attached or whatever, and identifying that mental state of the mental affliction arising in your mind, then you have to, in order to develop this mind of restraint from engaging in that kind of mental affliction, you have to also understand the negative consequences of allowing yourself to become dominated by the mental affliction when it has arisen in your mind. Does that kind of get at the question?
So non-virtue, just by having the anger in the mind at that point, is not non-virtue. If you don't.
domsim sirwa
네.
베나 나자 질라 나기나 나자 텔라 네바기 아니다 카르소레 세당 세라 소와테다 디 나자라 네기 나자라 네기 디 자와네 사기메 예베 tomba지어와 어떤 나시레.
So it's kind of like, in terms of like a sickness, if you have a sickness that's the result of some kind of food that you eat, you eat something and you get sick from that, then you recognize that this sickness, this illness arises from that food, then you say, I'm not going to eat that anymore, then that is this mind of restraint in a similar way.
나자기 예미 나 세라 소박 세주 티기 마자나 안에 나자 텔라미 네디 안에 나자디 동화데 마서네 안에 오다 세티라 자완에 사기메 양바지어와 다 니모네 테나시 체니 니모비 니몽기 니와 동화중화데 체네 니모데 자완에 배 몽반에 자완에 본토네 자완에 보기 테마시나야 뉴도 단데 타르 자완에 쳐봐 치기 양바자 가시 안에 자와들라 주고 주나야 아니 야 가신 조신도 주바 마인바 니믹스 때니 안에 주에나 두시야와래.
So then to elaborate on that, here there are cases where our behavior is motivated by these mental afflictions, and there are times when we're effectively habituated to that behavior, or we do it we're unable to stop ourselves from doing it for the time being. But so in those kinds of cases, we need to understand that this is motivated by one of the mental afflictions, desire, attachment and aversion, or desire, hatred, etc. And in those cases, then we may recognize that we're not able to stop doing it altogether from the very right now, but we should make whatever effort we can to minimize our engagement in that kind of behavior. And then likewise, by seeing the faults of the mental afflictions that motivate that kind of behavior, and then that faulty kind of behavior, seeing the defects that arise from doing that behavior, and then we think, even if we can't stop it right at this moment, we're going to do it less and less over time, and with the ultimate objective of being able to stop altogether doing that kind of faulty sort of behavior.
안에다 니몽 비슷한데 끼주면도 가들 하나 하면 탐제 달라 달라냐 대다 그냥 남에 매나전 치진 좀 있어 하다 하면 전부를 알아 달라와지 이나양 랑 대대기 야유나 깨면도 봐 라니 야와르게와 미셔봐 그러와 니몬도 전자되니 간다타나 리라장 타와야 님이다 봐 대다까지 찍라도서 니모비 세기 아니 야유면 나도 주바 챙겨기 단장 엄마한테 니모비 자들이 니모디기 아니 가소리 용하기 니시 미개와창 미개와데 체체도 니모고 그날라도 아니 세상고 그날라도 소쳐봐 마신비 아니 가서 대자고 그날라냐 마신발래봐 와티 남인 그 대우텔라 아니 가서를 대우 손에 쥐니 동아 빠도면 봐지 용거와 이런 장 엄마한테 오다 니모비 자디 인상 오다 진주 가라 대선도와 가들 하다 하면나 탐자 잘라냐 대다그냐이 매나가 주투고 말이스 그봐 오다 디 니모메티 니미사고
So here then, so that's talking about faulty forms of behavior, which include things like killing, stealing, and so forth, all of the, and the other forms of non-virtuous behavior that we might be engaged in. So we need to minimize them, avoid them as much as possible. If we're not able to completely abandon them right now, then to minimize them and gradually, with the objective of stopping doing them altogether. But in terms of So that's the sort of physical and verbal behavior which is motivated by the mental afflictions. Now, the mental afflictions themselves, we need to observe them when they arise in our minds, and to recognize the defects, the faults, and the negative consequences of these dominating our minds. It's said in the introduction to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life by Master Shantideva that even if all of the gods and humans in the world arose as my enemy, they would not be able to throw me into hell, such that I would suffer in hell. But however, the mental afflictions are the opposite of that. They are so powerful that when they arise, they can cause me to create karma, which will cause me to be reborn in the hells and suffer the burning fire of hell and so forth. So what we need to do there then is see the defects of having these mental afflictions arise in the mind, and to view them not as friends but rather as enemies, and then use whatever means we have to fight against them as our enemy, and to attempt to eliminate them.
Oh yeah.
Nyumong dang dongsim duchik tu nyumong dang dongsim nika simchik
nyumong nyewa ji marwa
mare
nyumong
duchik tu kitupkira pesa
ka nyumong dang domsen nyewode
no
nyumong dang domsen nyewode 제도 점서 그래 제가 연구를 돼
직도 연구를
제가 요청을 해 nyumong 제니 다야 님 domsen 자요와 nyumong 잠이다 그 domsen 연구를 와 다 nyumong 지기나 세상 자고 지기 제니 domsen디 제래 제고
domsen디
세상 제니 아니 나라가 세상 제와지나 아니 세상 그 님이 삼네 아니 제마 세상 미지고 제데 제래 제체 와 세상 자와네 미시 냠바디 nyumong 마지 용어래 용초로 와
카리스나 디디 nyumong 미게와래
nyumong 미gewa 말해 nyumong 미gewa 말해 nyumong 미gewa 말해 이 소리 좋아해 당가지 소리 봐 님배
nyumong iksa nyumong 미게와 요아래
말해서 nyumong 미gewa 요아래 nyumong 미gewa 말해
라리 돔심 게웨심 요아봐
domsen 그
게웨심 요아래 아니 nyumong 미게웨심 요아래스
가르스
마이 nyumong 미게웨심 요아래스
nyumong 미gesem 요아래 nyumong 미gesem 요아 말해 셈 요아 말해 nyumong 셈주인 거래
심중 Okay. So I'm getting the question here really is that the basic question is that when we have these mental afflictions arising in our mind, Kathy. So the question then is that it seems sometimes like we have a mental affliction like anger arising in our mind, and then we also are trying to sort of restrain ourselves from that, so that it doesn't come to dominate us. So it seems like as if the two are kind of present in the mind at the same time, right? And so it seems like this mental affliction has sort of a non-virtuous character to it, whereas the mind of restraint has like this virtuous character to it. And so the question then is that the way it works? Is that sort of your question? Yeah. The nyumong 미게웨 심중 요라스
nyumong 인게 미게와 인게 심중 요아래 다들 된다 진짜 자죠 그래. 와 대비 대자 세당 심중을 미게와래
No. 아니 돔심 게와 요라스 개위심 중요로.
또 돔섬데 딱 겨와를 코나.
개위크나.
미겨 뭐.
그냥 좀좀 두냠도 중계에서.
좀 중앙 요아래 시당.
두냠도.
전념지 중앙 요아래.
Yeah, so that's right. It is the case that you have sort of like different parts of the mind, one that is non-virtuous in nature, like the mental affliction, like anger, for example. And then on the other hand, you have this positive or virtuous kind of character mind or mental factor, to be used the technical term, which is restraining you from following after that. And so the two can coincide. But generally, Rinpoche said that the basic way of seeing this is that first anger arises and then sort of the mind restraint from doing that, following after it arises. So then there's another one. Is it necessary for a Hinayinist to receive teachings from a fully enlightened Buddha to be able to attain nirvana, that is, to remove the obstructions to liberation? Then he, Tekminpe Gangsak, the Sangene, can you translate that? Is it necessary for a Hinayinist to receive teachings from a fully enlightened Buddha to be able to attain nirvana?
야, 그것도 지금
So the Tekminpa, Tekminpa Sangene Sangene Chushuguru Pesa. Tekminpa Nyangde Tobyala. Tekminpa Nyangde Tobyala. Sangene Chushuguru Pesa.
안전히 제 마신다 수요시다.
Sangene Mashina.
산지 투메 톱지고서 아니 산재를 주고 그래. 시에 콜라 튼전 사연아.
Tunkin Sai.
튼전 사나 산재 주고 그래. 튼전 사 맞는 산재를 주셔요 말아 왔더니. 아니 산재 면에 산재 주고 가시.
So okay, basically you could say
그래서 팀행기 람 냠수 렘발라 산재 그 냠수 렘고래. 산재 그 숨비 쳐지 셔고래.
Sange Kurang
산재 코로나 된다. 자야 그 팀행부 산 자유 고가 위에나 쉬고래. 자유 가와 면에 쉬어요 말해.
Okay, here now the question basically if it means a person who's following the lesser vehicle necessarily must necessarily hear this. Who asked that question? If they're not. Okay, so the answer then is that okay, if a follower of the lesser vehicle to achieve nirvana, they definitely must receive the teachings of the Buddha. Now, it's not the case that they must necessarily receive those teachings from a Buddha directly, okay? So, so for example, Rinpoche said, if all of the conditions are right, if everything is in place such that that person meets a Buddha, then ideally, yes, they should receive teachings from that.
좀 전에 그 순기 체두셔이 두자라 팀에만 보여래. 콜로 발박이 콜로 당보기 체두셔이 두자 전도 강가 팀에 말해. 순사지. 좀 전에 그 중국에서 순사들라 팀에지 가서요 말해. 좋아. 근데 산재 자유高 연관들이. 좋아. 당 알아서 산재 자유 高 매와 인자 아니다.
So here then the point is that like just if we take the recent history, when we might say, or the current time period, at the time that the Bhagavan Buddha was living in India in 2,400 or whatever years ago, then at that time all of his direct disciples many of his direct disciples were persons who had sort of a lesser vehicle sort of disposition, and they had the good fortune to receive the teachings directly from a fully awakened Buddha, and some of them then became arhats as a result of that. However, like us, we don't have the fortune to meet a fully awakened Buddha, so we're reduced to receiving instructions that have been transmitted by other people or transmitted from the Buddha through other masters or teachers, and then we can learn them that way. So the same thing applies to, of course, to the people who are following the lesser vehicle, that after the time that Bhagavan Buddha was on earth, in the world, then they have to receive teachings that were transmitted from him via other people.
우마지비 최저 강 가라라 년대 산제 드는 투왕제 저래 년대 산제 드는 투왕제시 년대당 산제의 랑산제 뉴데 팀은 가서 뉴데 산제를 깨버리스 산제를 깨단 가르래서나 산제기 년도다 랑자라 땡데 삼미 최대네 안테 년도다 랑자가 냠술랑 발을 때네 아니 랑가 차주 년도다 집에 공부하다 랑자가 권장 토고래스 인상 동안의 전형도와 년도 산제 드는 동안 제스 동안의 제스의 가르가 동안기 땡데 삼미 최대네 아니 예랑가 리젠데다가 냠술랑 발을 때네 아니 랑가 톱지 대우
So it says in the introduction to the Madhyamaka Avatara that it said that the Shravakas and the intermediate Buddha, this refers to Pratyeka Buddhas, are born from the Muni, from the sage. Sage here is an epithet, a name for the fully awakened Buddha. So what that indicates then is that those persons who are of that kind of, have that kind of disposition, such that they are going to enter into the lesser vehicle paths of the Shravaka and the Pratyeka Buddha, they receive instruction on the profound emptiness from the Muni, from the sage, either directly or indirectly, and then they're able to actualize the nirvana or liberation that is the result of following the path in those two ways, the Shravaka or Pratyeka Buddha vehicles.
I'm sorry. Can I ask what is behind the question? What is behind the question is why would it be necessary to remove the obstacles to omniscience to be able to lead other sentient beings to release from suffering?
Okay.
I say.
Do you, 시집 그래서 미신 타발라 점발라
타바 줘봐라 타바 토바르바 타바 줘봐서
미신
년도에
말이 미신 타발라 점발라 to lead to
그러지
타바디라 디 시집 방구레에서
타바 토바르 시르방으로
미신 타바디라 소설 시집 방구레에서
타바 쳐봐라
그래
아니 미신
타바디라
딱 가서 그래 타바 쳐봤다는 거고 말해 시르방우 말해 그러마 타바 쳐봐라 타바 남제와 제발에 시르방우 말해 타바 쳐봐라 그러마
미신 타벨람
담바 제발에 시르방우 말해 대네 아니 타블은 땡강가 산제 연구래 대
No. Yeah. The answer to that is no. That it's not the case. Did any of this get translated? I don't remember. Okay. The question is, would one have to have removed the obscurations that prevent omniscience, the so-called cognitive obscurations or obscurations that prevent knowledge of everything, omniscience, and i.e. become a Buddha in order to lead others to liberation? The answer is no. That's not the case because one can teach the path without having become a Buddha.
나 전다디 가르쳐서나 상집 지리 방고에서 가나 강 치바 천gen기 두자티기 강라 치에그 두자티기 감당 삼바 치다와 신도 시에니 아니 코라 두자 코란 그 로저단 팀바 아니 최된 것이 고그러와 어디다 딜러 상제 고그래 두지 감당 삼바 매와 아니 코라 펜도 주면바 치다와 신도 시에니 아니 최된 것들라 아니 상제 고그래.
So, however, you can say, however, that to really be able to teach people, others, and to lead others to liberation in a way that exactly conforms to their sort of character, their disposition, their understanding, and so forth. In order to do it in that way, then yes, you have to perfectly, then you have to be a Buddha and thus would have to have removed all of the obscurations that prevent omniscience.
Oh yeah.
It would seem that as long as we still hold aggregates to be truly existent, it would be very difficult to retain an experiential understanding of the self being free of true existence. How then are we these two understandings realized in the same meditation session or in subsequent sessions, like sequentially, or ... or as a question? So let's see. Jisi pungpo zenyopa. This will actually be explained in what's coming right. This question that you've just asked actually gets explained right in the next part of the text. And then the follow-up on that. We hear teachings on selflessness that I'll just rephrase the question here. In the introduction to the middle way, Chandrakirti's Madhyamaka Avatara, it uses the example of the chariot as being designated upon the collection of its parts. Chariot designated in that way as an example of the self or the person being designated upon the aggregates. So the question here is that the cart, they're using the word cart, which I actually like, cart as opposed to chariot. Cart is a phenomenon rather than a person, and so the cart is designated on its parts. How could this be an example of used to demonstrate the relationship between the person and the aggregates, because the cart is a phenomenon rather than a person. The umla jupla shingta kasa gangsaki dame shingta ki pe yorba. The shingta krang gangsak mare the chures chetsang the gangsaki dame ki pe kana yoresa.
신다기 연락 초발라 때네 신다 따와 대당 강사게 다시 풍부 초발라 때나 강사 따와니 어디 배진 작게 말했어.
배준 작으로 이 신다 그랑 강사 말에.
강사 연구 말에.
The thing here is that it's used as an example for the way in which a person is designated upon the aggregates, but it's not saying that a cart or chariot or whatever is itself a person. Rather, it's showing the way in which the process of designation takes place is analogous. It's the same process of designation. Does that? I don't know who asked the question.
That wasn't exactly the question.
That's close enough. Okay. Dharma does not come about in verse 11 above, Dharma does not come about merely through engaging in physical austerities. Does this imply that one should engage in physical austerities? If so, what differentiates appropriate and inappropriate physical austerities? Do you remember what page the Tibetan of this is on? No. Yeah, I was just trying to find that. 17, is it? Right, yeah, I just wanted to, Ludung Chepa Bashigle, Chume, Ludung Chepa Bashigle, Chume, Detardeini,
와도
the
주둥
Chuchik,
구둥 쳐봐.
Ludung Chepa Bashigle, Chume, Detardeini, Shina Nupa Pangme Jing.
야 친사래ပဲ.
The Chinsa, in the do it dire, Ludung Chepa Sauna, Dan Katup Chikpa Chikang Repesa.
알지?
Ludung Dan Katup
쇼다 주둥.
Chiptin, Re.
내 자와 집어야 돼. 주둥 semendo 주둥 야야.
Chiptin,
오야. 다 그래서
the Ludung Chepa Bashigle, Chume,
구둥 쳐봐 나진. 구둥 쳐봐 나진은 저 주둥 게 아니 류둥 쳐봐서 봐. 구둥 문도 해.
Ludung.
아니 류둥 쳐봐 봐시래. 구둥 쳐봐서 봐. 사직으로 지를 구둥 사람들 류둥 사람도 구둥 쳐봐 이렇게 가르치겠어. 류둥아 구둥아 쓰고 말해.
Ludung Dan Katup Chikpa Repesa.
아니 류둥아
Ludung Dan Katup.
구둥나 가다 집어내었어. 류둥나 가르 집어내와.
Katup,
가도 가버려. 가도시가
Katup. My pronunciation is so bad.
가도시당 류둥아처럼 가도 때마다 집어줘 거예요.
Kagaraha.
그래. 집어줘 거예요. 류둥아 쳐봐서. 류둥아 쳐봐서 리가 가도다 가도라 만보 거예요. 와. 가가 연구를 와. 류둥아처럼 리 가도 때마다 고쳐 그래.
Ini di Katup Dan Lungdunga Kashi Yapo Yorbe, Kashi Dukcha Yorbe. Di
답변한 아주 류둥아 쳐와서 이가라 지당 꾸롱라서 라래 거래. 배는 가라도 뉴네 니마 지당아 저가나 리세 가도 땡체 대거리티 개월에 마도 대가르소래 미그 팬도며 말에 개월에 전주 있으면 육군에 나에 나나 안에 산제 특징 줄을 리지가도 때 말아 봐. 리세 세 마사와 리지가도 땡체. 좋아. 어디 가도 쓰그러와. 어딘서 상불래. 개베레 티버치 미쳤어. 삼바 전주 있으면 육군에 나야. 좋아. 근데 그 매봐라. 아니 세져봐도 가도 템바도를 다 팬도요 말해. 동화 잡아.
So yeah, the basic distinction here between good austerities and bad austerities, or asceticism being virtuous or asceticism not being virtuous, comes down to principally to the motivation. So that, for example, even the Buddha, or when he was practiced heavy austerities, Doing that motivated by bodhicitta is, of course, virtuous, because the motivation there is virtuous, and thus the activity, the behavior, is virtuous. On the other hand, if you don't have the proper motivation, and you do even the same kinds of practices, then they're not virtuous, and they can be non-virtuous as well. So the distinction then comes down to motivation.
If I could follow that up, it seemed that just prior to attaining enlightenment, the Buddha was engaging in austerities, and then he seemed to indicate that that was not the correct path, and
No.
then he changed
Yeah.
course, and attained enlightenment. So that was kind of the implication there.
Yeah. Okay. Then 상이 춤는데 장춥기 싱 월라.
까와짜와 누루 까와짜와 다 되지.
띵을 가둡 십시.
아주 까와짜 봤어요. 까도 레디. 진짜 까도 야하지라 봐. 그러봐. 까도 짜와 누루 까와짜 봤어.
이 가서 세체 땅.
세체 봐. 진짜 자중해 나와 임바. 윤내 가서 까도 채와 제 삼바 찬주 그섬 육군나 나와 인자 개화를 만도. 저와 까도 레디. 저와 저와 삼보를 만도 드레스.
이 상게네 드니 카투브 덴데스 탈베 람요마레 숭나수가
타벨라 말스 간세.
그디 카투브 시우시디 여러봐 디 can you say that?
다 대쇼요. 대대레스. 까도 째바데라. 산제게 안에 대가도 째들 코랑 데르바. 누르까와째 세대 제게 예미라 소와 토니 아니 나랑 좀 타마와다 되게 예와 무지부치도 까도 째바레데 삼바 삼부차 도지 튼도다 삼바 찬죽스 요코랑 그 잡아라 대 멤버 눈에 가서 대단 들도 와 눈에 가서 까도 째바레데 참바 찬죽스 죽구나랑와 인상 꼭 개와레스 대마인 바가 삼바 메바 센쳐발라 소와 안에 삼 호텔라 아니 가서 도시 치료로 그 와게 세져봐. 다 된소 안에 다 겨주고 말했어.
So here, yeah, the basic issue is motivation there, that for ordinary people, then trying to do these extreme austerities without the proper motivation, then it's not going to be virtuous at all. In fact, it's liable to turn into non-virtue. And but on the other hand, like for example, we practice the fasting practices and so forth, where we avoid food for a day or whatever. And if we're supposed to be doing that with bodhicitta and compassion and so forth. And so in that case, then you're doing the same practice, but you're doing it with the right motivation. So it's a virtuous kind of practice.
Oh yeah, that's good. That's good.
No,
that's we
have short ones, yeah. Talgiwi lula namshigi tsini kariyoresa. Talgiwi lula. It's the same as in according to the Prasangika Madhyamika school. What is the definition of consciousness? It's the same. It's just the same as other. It's the same as in the lower systems of other systems of Buddhist philosophy. No difference. What is the end point of the contaminated appropriate aggregates? The sakche nyelingi pungpo gi zepa kariyoresa. The sakche nyelingi pungpo tar kariyoresa.
sakche pungpo karise.
Sakche nyelingi
pungpo karise gore.
Mare the sakche nyelingi pungpo gi zepa.
Ta sakche nyelingi pungpo se de ane 가소래 사전 예능지 풍부 빵바티잖아 사전 일 풍부 세스거래 좋아 다좀 톱디 잠바 안에 가소래 냐라라 이나냐 다좀 톱디 잠바 안에 사실 일이 풍부들 풍부가 요어와 풍부가 뛰어와 어 사실 일이 풍부 자좀 톱대 잡아 당 다니가마 가시 중아 사실 일이 풍부 자좀 토마토바들라 사실 일이 풍부 뛰어와래 어 되네 자좀 치표디 잠바 아니 사실 일이 풍부 세네 겨월년대 잠바 아니 사실 일이 풍부 랭그 말이
So the point at which the contaminated appropriate aggregates are ceased has to do with the process of actualizing nirvana. And so for someone who achieves the arhatship, which is the initial, when they initially achieve arhatship, with so that they've become an arhat during that life, then they still have the remainder of the contaminated appropriate aggregates. Here we're talking about all 5 aggregates collectively. So there's the remainder of those 5 contaminated appropriated aggregates that have, from the beginning of that life, one has already taken up. So that exists for the duration of that life. And then when the end of that life in which one became an arhat, at the end of that life, then that person relinquishes the contaminated appropriate aggregates and moves on to another form of existence.
아니야. 자주 생각이 사탄부터 봐. 장순 파박이 남토와 뒤채나 다 장선 파박이 남토가 미 가사되기 자전일이 풍부래 되게 사탕부터 뒤잠바 아니 얼마기 내년이 밤에 풍부돼 아니 얘기라신 걸 읽고 못 주고 말해 대가래에서나 셈지 것도 없지 셈지 것도 얘기라신 걸 읽고 말해 되게 봐 제고 말해.
So there's a difference, however, in the case of someone who's following the Mahayana path. And there, where a bodhisattva, someone has, when they attain the first bodhisattva level, at that point, they were born into that life in which they actualized the first bodhisattva level through, with contaminated appropriate aggregates that are appropriated aggregates that are still contaminated. And however, and so once they, in that life, actualize the first bodhisattva level, then through the power of the generation of that simketi dunjam okay.
라산 셈지 와라 자주 셈 어디 세주제의 넘버 초다고 미산 리디란에 교육고 렌제린나 매바 교환이 장시 셈지 차와라 된송 세도와 진주가라 세주제의 자산동 세도 교환 나신도 와 어대나신제네 라산답이 셈지 되게 dob지 남의 내년이 방법 풍부디 유지라신 걸 리라 조와래.
So out of the power of their bodhicitta, which is has this special kind of aspiration, special aspiration here referring to the intention. The verse here, there's a verse actually in the introduction to the Bodhisattva's way of life, which describes this, how it functions as like an alchemical process of transforming base metal into gold. Similarly, the body or the contaminated aggregates of the bodhisattva who in that life in which they actualize the first bodhisattva level, through the power of their special pure aspiration, then that affects the transformation of their the contaminated aggregates which they were born with in that life. They are transformed into this body which has a mental nature, special kind of body.
Oh yeah. That is so. Oh yeah. That touching the 주와된 줄 제도 돼. 돈이 또비 탑이 주된 바세. 돈이 또바 탑이 주된 바세 돼. 나 돈이 또 봐대 탈바 있어야 돼. 아니 차와 되지 그동안 냐와 시와더라. 탈바스. 다 대장 맞잖아요. 년주 밤에 빵바. 그러고 빵바들라야 타바 세초 그래. 그러고 다 차원 되지 그동안 냐와 시비 니시 세대 탈바테 돈이 또 봐대 탑이 주된 바대라. 파바 건가 보이니 대답바유 전전에 칠라 미돈 다니지 결론 남라 대대마 세가라 오다 다지 공도 샤바 나신 전에 루데라 다야 유쇼요 파바 건가 보기 나르셰비 가사다 최지 다음에 또 가사다 최지 다음에 봐 무슨도 또 봐라 또봐 인장 아니 무슨 또봐 또봐대 탑기 심비관이야 권배 아니 다 가서도 대답에 또봐니 무슨 또be 통남 톱네 와 통남 톱네 최남지 미두메지 저마단 차와 미두메지 저마단 차와 현지 틀라 미줘봐서 현라 마도봐 闲了嘛对吧电把来刚才闲几米之哇电把抬来什么你当把抬来闲几把闲的这么对吧太什么了改哇什么了改哇他们呢当你即将你给龙闲那么了什么当把你他们样都买呗你给龙闲几将他把弄来送不起来
So here then, this leads into the next topic, actually, which shows how understanding emptiness acts as the cause for liberation. Now, liberation, there are multiple levels of it or types of it. There's the liberation, which is the extinction of any portion of the mental afflictions. There's the liberation, which is the exhaustion or abandonment of the aggregates, which are appropriated through contaminated karma and mental affliction. So liberation subsumes those multiple levels of liberation from various forms of undesirable mental afflictions and so forth. And so here, this verse shows, verse 34, right? Yeah, 34, shows how the Arya Ananda taught understanding emptiness or realization of emptiness as the cause of liberation. So the verse here says, having heard this topic of this kind of topic, emptiness, the superior Ananda obtained the Dharma eye. Then he himself taught this topic repeatedly to the monks and nuns. And so that's how the verse reads. This is explained in the commentary, which references how Arya Ananda understood this and actually obtained the path of seeing, which is realization, direct realization of emptiness, which is the meaning of that which has been explained up above. And he attained also the Dharma eye, which understands all dharmas, all phenomena. And
최년 모습도 통한라 안에 파도 줘봐기 두매봐 접지 매봐 그러와 주마단 차와 아니 주마단 차와데 현지成了 미줘봐 전에 현라 마되봐
So this eye of Dharma is the eye which, basically a kind of vision which sees reality, the nature of things as it actually is, or emptiness in this case. And by achieving that eye, which, and here it's this special kind of eye or vision is described as being without any yeah. So here it's the object here is emptiness, and the vision is referred to as the eye of Dharma, which sees that, and it's free from any kind of dust or any kind of dirt, as well as all forms of defilement. So the eye is free from all that kind of dust and dirt. And then it's also So here, when one has this eye of Dharma, which sees reality or emptiness, then one cannot be misled away from the teaching of the Master, the Buddha, into other systems. No one else can mislead you or lead you away from the teaching of the Buddha into some other system. One can't be misled into some other system of thought. And when Aryananda, having attained that, had gone beyond any kind of doubt and had gone beyond any kind of hesitation as well. So he attained that, having attained that kind of eye of Dharma, which sees reality, he himself taught the other monastics that again and again, repeatedly, this kind of teaching. And then as a result of that, the other monastics, monks and nuns, were able to achieve liberation, and that was explained in the scriptures itself.
Oh yeah, 되게 양 개론 현지 타바토바 lumla 손배 돈이 또 비셔럽니 타바토베 탑라나 매봐 돈이 마도 발라 안에 타바토 미니 봐다 되게 파발라 돈이 또 와지 죽고와리 파바기 안에 가서래 타바토바 제발라 돈이 마도나 안에 타바 미도 봐 이제 파발라 돈이 또왜다 차바디 죽고와리
So this shows, because it's taught that way in the scriptures, that in the sutras themselves, it's said that Aryananda achieved this kind of vision of emptiness, the eye of Dharma, which understands reality in the sense of emptiness, and then taught it repeatedly to the other monastics. And that by means of that, they as well achieved liberation through this kind of realization of emptiness. Therefore, by that, we know that this wisdom that realizes emptiness is the unexcelled method for achieving liberation. That is, in order to become an Arya, one must necessarily have this kind of direct realization of emptiness.
Oh yeah, that's it. 正话是呢，2年就考了正吧。他话2年就考了正吧的了，他话是个正的，让心就做干巴的了。安尼他考完就别人吧，考了多别人吧，当年多别朋友，特别让心担吧，西也别那他，咱家来，我来就莫搞去，我来听过的吧，是吧？唐不，来就莫去，唐不的马军来着，唐不考了，安尼就别人吧，提了你也把你给拿呢，考就别人吧，考越早往我送我的，提了在那考越背，你都去。
So then this leads into the next topic, which is showing how bondage and liberation are themselves devoid of having any kind of intrinsic nature. So it's a rejection or negation, refutation of the idea that bondage and liberation are established by means of their own intrinsic nature. This has multiple subtopics that we won't go into through each of the subtopics here because they come as we hit them, as we come upon them later on in the text. And so, however, the first subtopic that arises here is showing the way in which samsara occurs, how it arises. And that has itself two topics, the identification of the root of samsara, and then an example for how it is that in dependence upon that root of samsara, cycles and revolves. So the first then is, of course, the identification of the root of samsara.
다 거기 자와 생각돼 다 근데 소리에서 공도 자주 쉬어인바 거기 자와 생각돼 근데 지라서 그래서나 다 다도 좀 많이 오대 임바래 그러와 다도 좀 많이가 거기 자와 상관데 아니 단주와기 마샤네 다주 공도 샤인바 다도 좋아 아니 최지 다도 좋아 좀 받아 가사가 다도 좋아 좀 많이가 아니 가소래 미유경원에 샤바마도 가 아니 진단을 쳐봐 매봐 라시 주바 좀 니가 인상 니가 아니 거기 자와레스 인상 거기 자와라 진단 믿음 봐 니여봐 되게 줘요 말레스 다 주다 오마나 지디 간라 거기 자와텔라 가사 그 당신 샤라 가사 그 당신 될라 가사 대바 주바 집에 좀 마셔봐 가사 라자 두베 제도 주바 집에 좀 마셔 최지 당전되라 강사 담바 주바 집에 점바대 최지 당전샤 대샤나 아니 거기 네가 거기 자와이나 거기 자와라 된다 믿음 봐니 여기 견정 거래 야다
So here the question arises then about what is the root of samsara. And in order to understand that, we need to differentiate the system that is being presented here from other philosophical systems. Now, in this system, the Prasangika Madhyamika system, it's said that the root, there's in terms of a misconception of the way things exist and the way that misconception holds its object. The object which is held by that misconception, there's no real difference. That is the misconception of the self of persons and the misconception of the self of phenomena. In the way in which those two variants of the misconception arise in terms of the object which they misconceive, there's no fundamental difference because in both cases it's a self, and self here is defined as we've discussed previously, as some kind of autonomy or something being established by means of its own intrinsic nature. Now, the difference then, the two forms of this misconception are differentiated in terms of the base upon which that misconceived or imagined object is assigned. That is, in one case you have a person is misconceived as being intrinsically existent, or other phenomena are misconceived as being intrinsically existent. So although there are two forms of the misconception, the actual way in which those two misconceive their appearing object is the same. There's no difference between them. Now, in this particular system, this system that we're looking at now, the Prasangika, there's no fault in having sort of two fundamentally different roots of samsara, as some might ascribe to it, because the mode of apprehension of its object in the misconception of the self of persons and the misconception of the self of phenomena, the mode of apprehension of the object is the same in both cases. Now, in the other systems of Buddhist philosophy, they differentiate, or they say that the root of samsara is specifically the misconception that holds the person as having a self-sufficient, let me restate that. In the other systems of Buddhist philosophy, they say that the root of samsara is the misconception that holds the person as having a self in the sense of a self-sufficient substance. So they define the root of samsara in that way, that the misconception which grasps the person as possessing a self in the sense of a self-sufficient substance is defined as the root of samsara, whereas they say that the misconception which holds phenomena as being real or being established by means of their own intrinsic nature is not the root of samsara. They make that kind of distinction. So there's a fundamental difference on that ground between the Prasangika Madhyamika system and all of the other schools of Buddhist philosophy.
Oh yeah, 좀 더 오마디 때先啊，안에 공마를 과제를 폐교하러 내 인장 다 좀더 오마게 가사가 단진다 최이 단진이나 차라사서 가사 된바 가사랑 란자두베 저희 주어 좀 봐도 가사가 단진체 가사 된바 주어 좀 봐도 최이 단진체 다 가사 된바 준비 된진 대기 최지 단진 대기 코에 짜 많이 슬랍차이 봐다 코에 시자 지그래 저와리 코에 시자 시야지 거래를 해서나 가사 란자두베 저희도 주어 준비 좀 봐 코에 짜와 가사 란자두베 저희도 주어 준비 좀 봐 깨기 시청견데 가사 된바 주어 준비 좀 봐 되게 치기와 인상 코에 시장 거의 싸워 말이 인간 내생님보다 거의 시자 차도바 말로 저 코알라 초바 민가 세야 균전 테리 그죠 아니 예란 다좀바 대다기 거의 시자 타도바 가사 덴바집이 된진데 로야 말아 그 시리 위자 빠요 말아 코알라 초바리 거의 싸워 가사 란자도비 제도 주지바 빵와 디체바 시어거리 그래서
거의 시자당 거의 싸워
거의 시자당 거의 시자와 카가레스 거의 시자의 최지 단전그 거의 시자 지그래도 거의 싸워 지금 말했어 거의 싸워 그 단전들라 거의 싸워데 간지 고고래서나 코리 제제기 편제기 내군에 longe 기념 먼저 고고하래 그래서 최지 단전그 단전라 중에 그 단전 나전 주 말을 받더라 아니 최지 단전 매아래
주기 단전 매발래 디 줍다 오마 So here, now in the lower systems of Buddhist philosophy, they make this kind of differentiation between the misapprehension of a self of persons and a misapprehension of the self of phenomena, because they say that the misapprehension of the self of persons, which operates as the root of samsara, is in order to achieve liberation, one has to get rid of that. But it's not the case that one has to get rid of the misapprehension of the self of phenomena in order to achieve liberation. They would say that the misapprehension of the self of phenomena is a obscuration which prevents omniscience, rather than an obscuration which is a mental affliction and serves as the root of samsara. they in turn make a differentiation, an additional subtle differentiation between the root of samsara and what is called the fundamental root of samsara in the following matter. They say that the misapprehension of the self of persons as being a self-sufficient substance, that is the root of samsara, and when you get rid of that, then you achieve liberation from samsara. But, and so it's possible then to actualize this liberation, which is the freedom from being reborn in samsara through the power of that kind of misconception, but not having gotten rid of what is called the fundamental root of samsara, which is the misconception which holds the person to have a self which is established by means of its own intrinsic nature. That's a distinction which is held by these lower schools of Buddhist philosophy.
그래서 대체인자 다 루디라 가사가 단지다 최지 단지 니가 아니다 진단치 라신이 주와 진바예자 니가기 아니 코야 자와 쳐바다 근데 연락 중에 그 난전도 주 말이 듣고나 쳐봐 니가 직바인 말이
So here then, again to finish that up, that in the lower systems of Buddhist philosophy then, the ignorance, which is the first of the 12 factors of dependent origination in producing samsara, is defined there as this misconception of the self. The misconception of the person, which ascribes a self in the sense of a self-sufficient substance to the person. That is what they call the root of samsara. Because that's the basic mental affliction that produces the karma that impels one to take rebirth in samsara. So in that system, it's possible then to, in order to achieve liberation, you eliminate that form of the misconception of the self of persons without eliminating the subtler form of the misconception of the self of persons. Now in this system here, in the Prasangika Madhyamika system, that sort of differentiation is not made in the same way. Rather, what we say here is that the misconception of the self of persons and the misconception of the self of phenomena are differentiated from the point of view of the base upon which the misconception arises, the person and other phenomena. But as far as the way in which that misconception apprehends its object, person or phenomenon, there's no difference in terms of the mode or way in which it misconceives the object.
야, 다 된디. 가서래. 직다 코에 짜와 대라. 진당 대라. 다 가사 그 단진당. 오마되고 가사 그 단진당. 루디기 가사가 단진이오데 진당 민자나야. 다 짜와 치수데 직바인 바리. 진당 그 왕 미자매라 오마 그 짜와 치수 셰야 대당. 니 짜와 치수데 아니 직바인 바리. 오메 짜와 치수 간지 셰고에서나 니근데 짜와니 태양 지조 달래죠. 대마리데 텔라 셰단 라서 중 세고 다 니와 탐제지 짜와디 지조라 따와지래. 대마리데 세란 지조라 따와데 말이바레. 말이바레. 텔라 때네 아니 오란조라 차바당 현조라 당와기 안에 차단대다 연구하래. 오투스 거래. 다 대나신 다 직다대 인자시 바래. 직다고 가서래 차를 치바래. 마도 루딜라양 니근테 자와니 태양 직조 달라 총. 직다대 최지 단지다 가서다 따와대 가사 그 단지대 직다체 최지 단지다 직다 말와 최다 직조 달라 총. 테마리데 세간 텐라와데 마르바인 테라 셰단 라소 중 세라 아니 라조라 차바다 아니 샤조라 다마게 아니 셰단 중 아니 티 셰단 대다 그 군날란데 레사네 다 코르치 코르던제 두시게 거래.
So here then, the two systems are different in that the way in which they define the root of samsara as far as the object and the way in which it conceives its object is different. However, the way in which these operate so as to produce samsara is the basic process of the production of samsara from this wrong view is the same. That is, in both cases, here we're talking about the term is the view of the disintegrating collection. Now, this in the lower systems of Buddhist philosophy, this wrong view of the disintegrating collection is itself a form of ignorance. And that misconceives the self as having a self-sufficient, substantial self within it. That operates, that serves as the foundation for the root of samsara, in that from that wrong view, which is that form of ignorance, which misconceives the self, from that arises all of the mental afflictions. That is, and this is explained in a verse where it says that from that wrong view of the disintegrating collection, then the different mental afflictions of attachment, hatred, and so forth arise. Motivated by those mental afflictions, then one engages in karma. One does actions, and then out of those actions arise the various forms of suffering throughout in samsara. So the entire process of samsara arises from the operation of this wrong view of the disintegrating collection, which is ignorance. So this, the same thing applies within this system here, Prasangika system, in that the wrong view of the disintegrating collection is again a type of ignorance. The definition of how that ignorance apprehends its specific misconceived object is different. But as far as its functioning to give rise to the mental afflictions, which in turn give rise to karma, which in turn give rise to the entire process of samsaric suffering, subsequent process of samsaric suffering, there's no difference at all between the two systems in that. In both cases, you have this wrong view of the perishing, the disintegrating collection as a base or root of samsara.
Oh yeah, then 인상 다 거의 자와 되라 된다. 시원하신 가사게 단지다 최이 단지 세간라 가사라시지 주어진 비팅 바당 풍보라신지 다시 풍보라신지 주어진 저반이 어디 샤니. 단 내가서 거기 자왕을 송하니 지식 풍부 주의에 봐. 지식 풍부서나 안에 풍부라신지 주어진 바. 풍부라신지 주어진 비 전바데 최이 단지체. 풍부라신지 주어진 비 최이 단지되라. 니 요아래. 군다다 현재 니. 좋아. 군다스나 현재에서나 아니 가서를 주대 주려밤 다 리바기 텐데고 왕게 마마임바 균쟁 그 왕게 마임바 앙암 슈슈지 증간데 현재데 다 가서를 텐더라 써와 앙아란절 통마 매반에 연구 아니냐도 좋아 아니 라신지 주와 군다데 안에 춤당 냠바기 귤레베기 왕게 다 춥다 라시지 추와 대비 아니 라시지 추와 예비 두제 대다기 귤레비 왕게 아니 타지도 라시지 추와 증간데라 라신지 주와 타지도 라신지 주와 정견되라 저바꾼다 생각해. 아디지라다.
So here then, this process by which the identification of the root of samsara is this subject is explained or begun is addressed initially in verse 35, where it says, as long as one, in the translation it says, as long as one is fixated on the aggregates, one will also be fixated on I with regard to them. And so if we just take those two lines first, in the translation here it's saying fixated for translating what I'm calling misconceived, one misapprehends or misconceives the aggregates. So here I'd say as long as one misconceives the aggregates or misapprehends the aggregates, one will misconceive or misapprehend the I. Here, so in this case, what we're talking, what is being said is that the aggregates here are the basis of designation, and the I is that which is designated upon that base. So they have that, the I and the aggregates have that kind of relationship. And in terms of, we're talking here about the wrong view of the perishable, of the disintegrating collection, which is the misapprehension of the I here. Okay, here the wrong view, the technical term here is the wrong view of the disintegrating collection. Here, the object of that wrong view or that misconception, misapprehension, is the I. So the terminology is tricky here. So what happens is that this wrong view takes the I as its object, misapprehends it, and holds it to exist by means of its own intrinsic nature. In which it doesn't actually exist as. So now, in order to understand this wrong view of the disintegrating collection, one must differentiate between two forms of it. There are two forms. One is called that which is natural, and the other is that which is intellectually acquired. Intellectually acquired. The first of these is the idea of an I, which one finds in people who have not studied philosophy in any way whatsoever, and it exists in animals as well. This is the idea of an I existing as if it existed autonomously or by means of its own intrinsic nature. And this sort of natural misapprehension of the I, misconception of the I, occurs just naturally, spontaneously, without requiring any sort of effort, or you don't have to study to do this. Animals have it without any kind of studying philosophy or whatever. Now, the other form of it is called the intellectually acquired misconception of the I, or the wrong view of the disintegrating collection, which misapprehends an I as if it was established by means of its own intrinsic nature. This intellectually acquired form of it is what is, you only develop this through the study of philosophy or through some kind of faulty reasoning. And when you've acquired it in that way, then it's not just sort of like the natural sense of misconception of the I that we have in everyday life. Rather, it's sort of a fixed determination where you think based on some kind of reasoning, faulty reasoning.
지수 풍부 진여바 대세태랑 안진여 세가 풍부 덴바 준비 된진 대라 된진 군다당 현진이 요래 디샤고 담보라
Nos.
아 대세서
Denzin,
풍부 덴바 준비 된진 대라
Punta-
군다당 현진이 요래 슬라임바
ale.
대세서 임바
Di pongbola dember zimbi.
풍부 덴바 준비 된진 대라
Lenketang kunta
군다니
ni yorwa.
셰임바
Di shemaso.
나 가셔와
Di jikta lenketang kunta.
이 기다야 요아래 니가래 요아래 풍부라 지 담보 풍부라 오라
풍부.
내가 지시 풍부 지여봐 대시 대랑 안 주의 시도와 나때때 잡고 요아래 지시 풍부 지여봐 세가 풍부 라시지 주와 준비 준바 대라 춥대 조다비 왕게 준비 군다 직당 춥대 좀 마다바 알아서 탐제라 앙암 수수기 전에 그 전반 현지 지금 이어와래 생활을 되니 시 아, 되니 대신에 네 대단대 때서 지고 말이야. 네 대단대 때서 지고 말이야.我这完了有当的咱们这在지고 말이야. 定爱学过着。因此的我其实풍부 라시지 주와 가서로 춥대 길레비 왕그 풍부 라시지 주와 준비 현이 수마 중와 대세도 안에 안전 현지 현이 수마 중와 예 스타트 주당 대주아
La.
풍부 덴바 준비 된정지 풍부 덴바 준비 된정들 군다다 현지 니세 군다의 거래래 스나 춥대 길레비 왕그 풍부 덴바 주와 타지도 준비 전바대 전바 군다의 체
Nos.
是吧？我滚到这个县域水嘛，就嘛，这些都，安尼，这是在那安这还这个县域水嘛，就嘛有啊嘞，
Okay.
安得了的。
So here then there's this verse. There are different ways of explaining it or commenting on it, and the way. I'll go through it in this one way first. Here it says in the verse that as long as one misapprehends the aggregates, then for that long, one will misapprehend the I. Okay, so how do we explain that? One way of explaining it is by saying that we have to differentiate between natural and intellectually acquired misapprehension of the aggregates or natural and intellectually acquired misapprehension or misconception of the I. Now, one way to explain these two lines is to say that as long as one misapprehends the aggregates, now, there are two ways to misapprehend the aggregates. You can misapprehend the aggregates just naturally in the way that animals and people who have not studied philosophy misapprehend the aggregates, misapprehending them, misconceiving them as if they existed by means of their own intrinsic nature. Or, in addition, there's philosophies that provide faulty forms of reasoning that lead one to believe that the aggregates are established by means of their own intrinsic nature or autonomously. And so one way to read these two lines, to comment on them or explain them, is by saying that as long as you have this intellectually acquired misapprehension of the aggregates, that is, seeing phenomena as if they, or conceiving phenomena as if they existed by means of their own intrinsic nature, as if they were real, existing as they appear, then for that long, there's no way that you can eliminate the natural misapprehension of the I, which holds it as if it were established by means of its own intrinsic nature. That's one way to explain these.
Oh yeah, that 군다 수고 군자의 가르를 해서 단다 네 천재 동자도와 지시 풍부라신지 주와 전바 외진 티 현유 수르바 마중와 여바 대세라 只做了单位对面，俺这天气记得很，就在讲马上把月是呢。安尼他看说的，俺这天气给记得给先有去把的啦，去一旦这个先有去把就过的，对吧？碰不上现在出发这边等先有日本水。马中华要把特色这里干了，安尼看啥个当成个先有就是马中华有那，安尼看啥个当面到的去当面到完你来到干了个七八的那个嘛，但是俺都到干了七八一把，看啥个当面当成个先有的按了去，提起来去当成个先有去个话，我的出生南京现在没这把印象，等的，其实碰不上现在出发准备。通过让现在出发准备，真把滚大越境，提先有日本，先有日本，水马就把特色了，安尼就做了到我这边，我今天就有了，现在得打这个的。
So here, the issue arises in the actual wording of the commentary on this verse. When you read the the sentence of that's commenting on these first two lines in the root text, it says that as long as one has the misapprehension, misconception, which holds the aggregates as being established by means of their own intrinsic nature, then, and as long as one has not negated or refuted the appearing object of that kind of misconception or misapprehension through reasoning, then for that long, there's no way to eliminate or to even to any extent at all to eliminate the actual misconception of the I, which is included within the wrong view of the disintegrating collection. Now, if we read this sentence out of the commentary just on the face of it, there seems to be it's incorrect because it conflicts with what we have said previously, that first one has to understand and develop an understanding of the selflessness, which is the absence of a self in the sense of an I, the self of a person, or the I as being established by means of its own intrinsic nature. And then it's only after that, that kind of understanding, that one can develop an understanding that the other phenomena, the aggregates, are themselves devoid of that kind of intrinsic nature. So the sequence here would be inverted if one follows the literal meaning of the commentary, the words of this commentary here. Therefore, we have to supply some qualifications to this sentence and say that in the first case here, as long as one has the misapprehension that the aggregates are established by means of their own intrinsic nature, here that misapprehension, we have to say, is an intellectually acquired or philosophically acquired misapprehension of a misconception that the aggregates are established by means of their own intrinsic nature. As long as one has that, then there's no way at all to eliminate the natural misconception of the I as being established by means of its own intrinsic nature, which is the idea of the I, which is the misconception of the I, which is included within the wrong view of the perishing, disintegrating collection. So is that clear? Yeah. Okay.
Yes, sir. Oh yeah. In the court, there was a China. Pump them but then be dancing Gundaki, Drondoki, Shan Su Machuma, Tishindo, and then Kansak them but then be dancing Shan Su Machuma, you are race. Kansak Dame dancing, Dama to be dancing Shan Su Chundu Zamba, 아니 가사 그 다음에 또 와. 가사 그 다음에 또 지사바 풍부 다도 좀바 좀비 타지도 좀비 좀바 군다 그 현유대 아니 탄탄 징징 로데 도고 와래. 타징징 타지도 좀바 좋아래. 세가라 아니 도고 와래 당 전도 그 현유 키바래. 되게 담아 군다 그 전도 그 현유 키바래.是吧? 대승과래 다 리디 센터 좋대.
겐디 그사 ngajin lanke ki
ngajin lanke 그 현유 매바 또 뒤잠바 풍부 타지도 담바 준비 던진데 또
콘다
군다데 도장 풍부 담바 준비 던진 현유 마게 받체. 제기나 다지도 가 담만이라 도를 깨는데 요거 말해.
So here, what we're discussing here, the way to understand it is the relationship between this intellectually acquired, philosophically acquired, or intellectually acquired misconception of the self with respect to the person, the I, or the aggregates. These have a kind of relationship such that once you have a understanding that the object which is held by the misconception that holds the I to be established by means of its own intrinsic nature, when you understand that that object does not exist, then so there you've understood the selflessness of the person. You've gotten that. And when you understand that with respect to this natural sense, natural misconception that holds the I as being established by means of its own intrinsic nature, then that understanding itself will automatically, will sort of by the force of that, one will eliminate the intellectually acquired notion that the aggregates, that is, other phenomena, are established by means of their own intrinsic nature, but you will not, at the same time, eliminate or necessarily impair even to any extent the natural misconception that the phenomena of the aggregates are established by means of their own intrinsic nature.
Oh yeah. 지세 당번이 지수 풍부 저 테스트랑 아주 예세가라. 어다 전도 현이 수마 좀 군다 여바 테스트 한지 여바래 생안진 한지. 대자병 안진 한지 언제 자면 마냥 봐 예병 안진 대 생안진 여나 양 레데 대래량이 깨와 양 세가나 들이 가르친 거래서 텐더병 안진 한지 대기 다 한지 대 마리바체 던지 하나 중에 마리바 던지 하나 중에 마리바 다 용거 알더라 코라 마리바 예스 안지 여나 오텐 안지 여나 양 레데 세가나 다 던지 텐더병 안진 대 마리바 야스지 아니 두제 내내 넘수모 자와시라고 소와 나시 체리 마르바 되게 아니 편지게 내가 군어 치기래 와 만지 연내 양 레데 편지게 내가 군어 치기랬을 때 운주자야 마세병 안진데 연나 코레 제제 편지게 내 소대 세가라 마르디바 양세지 두제 내내 넘수 또뭐 세가라 코레 제제 저 편지게 내 아니 너를 저 편지 순간 저와 편지 수목이 저와 편지를 내숨 속여 선언 미우 내숨 속여 원다 내숨 대숨가려 코와 저와 편지를 내소대야.
So then the last two portions of this verse, the last two lines, say that if one has this misapprehension of the I, karma will be created again. And due to that karma, one will again be reborn. So here, this is showing that if one has that natural misconception of the I, And if one has not eliminated that to any degree whatsoever, not even the sort of manifest forms of it, not to speak of the more deeply embedded forms of it, if one has not degraded that misapprehension, misconception of the I, if you have that misconception of the I, then you will accumulate the karma that impels you to be reborn within samsara. The karma that actualizes or impels you into samsaric existence. So here, this is indicated also in the verse of the basic wisdom of Arya Nagarjuna, where he lays this out, saying that here the misconception of the I is the ignorance, the first of the 12 factors of dependent origination. As long as one has that ignorance, one will necessarily engage in activities, the second factor of dependent origination, which activities here referring specifically to karma. And karma itself has different forms, that is virtuous, non-virtuous, and neutral, that engender, that impel you to take rebirth into the different realms of existence. Out of that karma, then, one is born into various forms of existence, and therefore this misapprehension of the I serves as the starting point for the activation of the activities of all of samsaric existence.
No, Panjagile, Lesum Seka, Maridiba Yasanji, Dujelene, Nansumbo, Lesumbote, Sonanda Sona Mayimba, the Miri, Lesumbote, Namsumbote. One Duce, Sekalata, Leangombote, Duce Grace, either Maribe Wangi Lessas, Sekalata, Kanisugore, Sena, Nela, Maripiki Wangi, Ani Chatanje, Benadusungoro, Tabong Anjingi Jigdake, TJ and Iowa Jibi Jigdake. Jigda teki wangi, jigda teki, anda teki, ani kasore, dadan dagi wala seba se gala, dagi wa, dagi, ani miso ambotang. Ani segula sowaki, ani seba jemba. Segula sowe seba je. Seba teki wangi, ani lengo kasore, lengomba tichedu, ani lengomba duche. Lengomba duche di kala debe tenji dubkuyena ani desaje debe ten madubata midebi ten dubkuyena shedanje o chadang teta ki wangi ani yungye ani lunga ki lede niwa duche ki lede imbari rwa niwa duche ki lengomba duche sete.
So then how this works again is that ignorance here is as the first factor of dependent origination, the chain of dependent origination that produces samsara is referred to here as the misapprehension of the I, holding the I in a way in which it doesn't exist. And then when we have that misconception or misapprehension of the I, then we also form the misapprehension or misconception of mine, that which we consider ours. So we think our, I, based on the idea I, then we think my I, my eye, my ear, my body, and so forth, or we think my property, my friends, and so forth. And then when we have these, when we misconceive these things in these ways, holding them to exist in ways that they don't actually exist, then based upon that, we form attachment to the things that we are fond of, and aversion attraction towards that which we judge to be desirable and pleasurable, and we develop aversion towards things which we judge to be undesirable or harmful to us. And then out of the attraction and aversion, they increase in power and become full-fledged desire and hatred. And then motivated by these mental afflictions of desire and hatred, then we engage in various kinds of activities. We create karma, we perform actions that in turn then, which are qualified as either virtuous or non-virtuous, depending upon the objectives that they have and the objects that they're performed in relationship to, and the motivations that impel them. And then based upon the creation of karma in that way, we manufacture karma in that way, and then out of those actions, those karmas, then arises the various forms of existence and other different types of suffering, whether we're born in the lower realms of existence or the higher realms of existence, or even in the formless absorptions as the result of sort of unvarying types of karma. In all cases, we're driven in this process of a cycle of samsaric existence from the initial force of the ignorance here, which misconceives I and mine.
Oh yeah, 가서래 편지지 레사 레데 사니 간다 아니 레데 ran grant 주지 깨진이와 가고와 레데 레디 남인지 대우 진비 아니 사람다 사람 남인지 대우 진비 니와데 아니 남식이 띵도 샤 남식이 땡데 아니 남식이 띵도 레지니 바 샤바테 아니 루제글레 다 샤모가세 루제글레 세발라 소와 테다기 아니 쇠답데 아니 타르 아니 시비 땡디가 가서 아니 가르서로 레 지시 주발랑 온도 쳐와 레지니 바 투잔도 지위 시비 땡디기 아니 지제 아니 양식치만 인삼 좋아 그 겨와대 중국아래 텔라야니 시바이 겨와 임배 아니 강사탕 겨와 임배 인상 다 텐데기 친간기 주의 조어대 가르래서 통만 아니 내주 군론도 주의 말해봐 강사기 최단진다 최단진 이거디 임바 인상 강사다 풍보를 하시지 주와 전반이 코에 자와 임배 어두세다.
So here then, the way this works again is showing how karma operates. Karma is action which we perform, which itself is impelled or motivated by the ignorance. Here, ignorance is referring to this misapprehension of the self, misapprehension of the person, or misapprehension of other phenomena. In both cases, then, the misconception, misapprehension of the person or aggregates, that ignorance serves as the motivating factor which induces us to produce various forms of activity. We perform actions motivated by that ignorance and governed by the mental afflictions that arise from that ignorance. When we create karma, then the karma itself referring to action, actions only endure for a certain moment, a short duration of time, the action as such. But the action as such, then, the karma itself leaves a propensity on the mind stream, the stream of the mental consciousness, and that the propensity there is a kind of power or ability, or potentiality, one can say, which exists within the stream of the mind and continues over time. Then when that potential or ability which has been deposited by the action in the past, when that comes into contact with actualizing factors of craving and grasping, those components of the 12 factors of dependent origination, then craving and grasping serve to actualize, to trigger the maturation of that potential within the mind stream. And in the case of taking rebirth in another life, the karmic potential or karmic ability, when it is triggered by craving and grasping, that induces the actual process of, upon the death of a person, the actualization of a karmic potential through craving and grasping causes them to take rebirth into their next life.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Oma doji le teni.
No, it's your muscle. So therefore, the point here is that ignorance at the beginning of the entire process, the ignorance of which holds the I or the person as existing intrinsically, or the aggregates, that is other phenomena, as existing intrinsically, serves as sort of the initial point from which all of this, the rest of the samsaric process up to rebirth is initiated.
Oh, yeah. Tata chung de shucha imba. So I said, Oma doji le teni. Kasa, Tado Kowa Koto Dro, say Galata. Kasa dancing Tawa Channel, le take on the Aniki to or to see Anikawa Jeva Yinzang, Koi Tawa race. Yinzang Koala Troala. 아니 ten이 den동도 도거와 가사다 풍부니 오데 den동도 도거와 아니 댐베 이상 얘랑 자좀 고마도 발라 니엄 비트바 방고레 가사 그 단제도 처지 단제니 오데 니엄 비트바레 대법와라 가사다 단제다 가사 단제 처지 단제니 이게 샤유메바 도거레 대도와라 돈이 도거와 이 댐바 인상 얘랑 자좀 베레 돈이 도바 댐바레.
So therefore, because it's as has been explained, then this misapprehension or misconception, which holds the person and the aggregates as if they were established by means of intrinsic identity, that misconception holding the self, the person and the aggregates as existing by means of their own intrinsic identity, is itself the root of samsara. Now, therefore, that root of samsara is that from which all of the rest of the samsaric process arises. Therefore, because that's the case, in order to achieve liberation from samsara, one necessarily has to realize that those two, the person and the aggregates, person and other phenomena, are empty of being real. That is, empty of being real here refers specifically to that they are devoid of existing in the way that they appear to us, when they appear to us as if they were established by means of their own intrinsic nature or intrinsic identity. Then that appearance is, in fact, false. And so in order to achieve liberation from samsara, we have to understand and eventually realize that the conceived object of the misconception of self, that is, the idea that persons or phenomena, other phenomena, exist by means of their own intrinsic existence, that conceived object is, in fact, non-existent. So when we realize that, or it's necessary to realize that absence of a real self of persons and phenomena. Therefore, this shows also that Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddha Arhats also necessarily have to understand the meaning of emptiness.
오야 풍부 된지 마사바 대세도 직다 메사바 스타코니 니가 년주 인바 주바체 오마그 직시르다 직년주 위바 연장 아 풍부 된지 마사바도 직다 안에 세고와 다시바 방교와 풍부 된지 마사바 대세도 직다 메사바 송라 직다 마사비 라존바 여바 카바 셴야 미시바 직다 오란지바 맨자기야 직다 마방바게 다줘바 여바 미세 다 강 개바디 가와서와레사나 직다기 뭐 조통달라 아니 민라와 여바데 티송와로 미시베 공부르르지 슝디 녀란 라존바장 아니 덴진세바 방바 쳇사로 덴진 시르도 딘년도 세바예장 다져바 방고레 방고와지 아싸워다바레스 오메 덴진 미방데 덴진 시르위장 라존바가 시르 미방바 인장 아니 덴진 시르도 저바 티왕성 민자 잡아데 하고서
我们拿出덴진 시르도
我们아세니 랑주바기 덴진 시르도 세 덴진 시르도 세바 인자 녀란 라존바가 덴진 마방 시르비와 레 탄주와기 덴진 년도도 세바 인장 야란 다좀발라 년주 빵바지 고고아래 년주 마바나 미바 인장 아니 어딘진 빵고아래
So here then, thus, because that's the case, it's as long as one has not eliminated the misapprehension of the aggregates as being real, one can't have eliminated the wrong view, which is holds the perishable collection or the disintegrating collection as if it was real. So this text above that we've read, that verse, indicates that that is the case, and is taught here in that way. And it's also within. It's explained likewise that an arhat necessarily must have eliminated this wrong view of the disintegrating collection. Even in the so-called lower systems of Buddhist philosophy, it's universally accepted that to become an arhat, one must necessarily eliminate this wrong view of the disintegrating collection. So there's no Buddhist masters who hold that there's such a thing as an arhat who has not eliminated this wrong view of the disintegrating collection. Therefore, in this system of the protector Nagarjuna, it's quite clear. It's quite clearly taught that the arhats who have followed the Shravaka and Pratyeka Buddha paths likewise must have entirely eliminated the misconception of things as being real. So what this is pointing out is that here Master Nagarjuna is presenting the prasangika view that in order to achieve liberation from samsara, even if one is following the Shravaka and Pratyeka Buddha paths, it's absolutely necessary to eliminate the misconception that holds both the self and the aggregates, that is, other phenomena, as being real. One must eliminate that misconception entirely. So it's very clearly taught in that way, and this is. The same idea is explained again and again down in other portions of the text that follow as well.
Oh yeah, that that's
So this verse then, where it says, as long as one misconceives or misapprehends the aggregates, one will misapprehend the I, those two lines. Did we get that?
Yeah.